Today, following a rant at CPAC by Donald Trump in which he attacked media outlets and once again attacked what he inaccurately defines as fake news, the White House banned a number of the most respected news outlets in the country from participating in a briefing with the press secretary, Sean Spicer. Reporters from The Times, BuzzFeed News, CNN, the LA Times, and Politico were not allowed to enter the West Wing office of the press secretary for the scheduled briefing. He only allowed in select invited reporters, like from Breitbart News, the One America News Network, and the Washington Times. Journalists from ABC, CBS, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and Fox News also attended. However, reporters from Time Magazine and the AP, who were set to be allowed in, chose not to attend the briefing in protest of the White House's actions. And we've got some comments from those involved with these and other news outlets about what this represents, this move to ban outlets based on the unfavorable coverage they've given you so far. This is from Dean Baquet, the New York Times executive editor, who said, "Nothing like this has ever happened at the White House in our long history of covering multiple administrations of different parties. We strongly protest the exclusion of the New York Times and the other news organizations. Free media access to a transparent government is obviously of crucial national interest." And the White House Press Corps group president put out a statement. This is the White House Correspondents Association board said, "Protesting strongly against how today's gaggle is being handled by the White House, we encourage the organizations that were allowed in to share the material with others in the press corps who were not. The board will be discussing this further with White House staff." Now, all of those people are members of media outlets, and so you might not be surprised that they think banning media outlets is a bad thing. But we actually have a statement from someone who you might recognize that's on the inside of the Trump administration who also spoke out against this. If we could roll video one.
Banning reporters and banning outlets. Politico is one of them. But you've said, I think, that that's not going to happen.
Well, I think, look, there's a big difference between a campaign where it is a private venue using private funds and a government entity. And I think we have a respect for the press when it comes to the government, that is something that you can't ban an entity from. Conservative, liberal, or otherwise, I think that's what makes a democracy versus a dictatorship. So I think there's a vastly different model when it comes to government and what should be accepted.
So that was in December. Apparently things have changed since then.
Yeah, that statement's no longer operative. But why was it only Time and AP?
That's right.
Why would not everybody else? They should just make it be the propaganda outlets. That's it. No credible news source.
Washington Times, One America,
yeah,
Breitbart.
Those are jokes.
Representative McClatchy, if we could jump ahead to 5B, said, "We oppose any efforts to ban reporters. Had we known, we wouldn't have participated and voted against it." Some apparently did not know.
McClatchy, yeah. So I would say I'll give him today. I'll give him today to make that call. But others should stand with Time and with AP. And what's the point of the White House Correspondents Association if you're not going to stand up? And that was not a stand-up response. That we are going to talk about this later.
There showed more solidarity in SNL sketches.
You stand up and you say no, absolutely not, and no member of the White House Correspondents Association will attend a briefing until this is removed. Because I got news for you. You don't need to go to Sean Spicer's briefing. You can stick a camera up and get it off the pool, or just wait till somebody else reports it and then you report it. That's fine. It makes no difference. We're talking about seconds. And they don't ever make news. They're spinning news. So keep in mind that you're constantly being spun. That's true of every administration, but you're being spun on a different cycle in this administration.
Yeah. So can I see that last graphic again, Jesus? Because I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. I like that the person who made this graphic for us apparently liked this tweet by McClatchy.
So I pulled this graphic after liking the tweet, and as I pasted in the email, I thought, should I have unliked it first? I should have.
You just
it's a good tweet.
It's a good tweet. And
we're
also,
genuine here, okay?
And no one, right? Cenk did a better job covering the Iraq War, during the Iraq War, and the run-up to the Iraq War than McClatchy.
Wasn't there a meltdown when the Obama administration was like, we're not going to treat Fox like a regular news organization when they first got in? And very specifically, because they're not. And every other group, including the New York Times, like, no, that's terrible. We're going to have solidarity with the Sean Hannity network.
Yeah. Well, Brett Baer actually tweeted about that, saying, I remember when those from the New York Times and others stood up for us when something like this happened. So he was opposed to it.
I've gotten like 3 tiny bits of information about Brett Baer in the last month. that make me go, maybe there's something okay about Bret Baier that I was unaware of.
No. No. See, don't be liberal like that. We gotta.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm slightly more conflicted about this. And interesting. Why? Because they don't allow the Young Turks into the White House press briefing. They didn't even allow us into inauguration, which, like, you could have walked off the street and got into inauguration. So they've denied us press passes in every way. I don't remember the New York Times sticking up for me or Fox News. So that club is already pretty insular. So the whole idea of the establishment saying, "Oh, I do declare they have now gotten around to us." Well, when they came for us, you didn't say anything. So that's why I'm a little bit conflicted on this, in terms of basically them saying, "Well, if it's the big boys, well, wait a minute, Young Turks is bigger than almost every outlet there if you're talking about online video." Sure, New York Times, of course, gigantic in its scope of articles, etc., right? So, but it's not like, hey, it's Bob that walked in across the street. No, they know who we are, and they don't want us in the press briefing room because they know that we would ask them tough questions. So now, look, our situation is not as well publicized, so probably New York Times doesn't even know about it, to be fair to them. And is the New York Times a more important organization press-wise than us? You're never supposed to say this because you're supposed to brag and do all this stuff. But of course they are. They've been around a lot longer.
They're not as important as Two Dope Boys in a podcast.
No,
Just
well,
to
to
be
be
clear.
fair,
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
okay.
Yeah, okay, let's establish that.
Yeah, or think tank. But,
Right.
but
On par.
So, of course, it makes a
Bigger.
difference when you ban New York Times. I get that. So, should they have done this? Not remotely. Of course not, of course not, of course not. But let's also acknowledge that they do it on a regular basis, and every administration has done it on a regular basis on slightly different standards.
Okay,
but
but
don't-
Cenk, there's, and I would love it if the Young Turks had a reporter in the White House briefing room on a regular basis. I would. I don't say that with any degree of disparagement at all. I think that would be great. But obviously they have to have some standards. There are news organizations all over this country. Every local station could say, we want somebody there. And
That's
so
right.
There are...
So, but now there are no standards, though, because if you say we're opinionated, are you kidding me? First of all, we gather news, Breitbart doesn't. Second of all, Breitbart's 1,000 times more opinionated than we are, so that standard is gone. Gone. Don't pretend there's that standard, because that standard does not exist. Yeah. And if you're talking about size, I'll take the Young Turks size versus 80% of that room. You include everything. You include articles, you include video, you include any platform you like. There's sometimes guys like the Weekly Standard get in, they have a circulation of 80,000 people. If this video gets less than
very
80,000
weird
people, I'll be embarrassed. That's one video out of 30,000. So it's not a size issue. Believe me, there's no problem down there, okay? And,
I think the
and it's
numbers
not
look
an
very
opinionated
good.
issue, so I don't know what the issue is. Let's put some watchers on the wall. Investigative journalists to run down the Trump administration and the establishment. You can make that happen. TYTnetwork.com/go.